I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Bob Roberts is over. Don't smoke crack. It's a ghetto drug. Okay, Andy. Bob Roberts. Hard to see this movie, turns out.
It's frustratingly difficult to watch. I actually bought the DVD so that we could have our conversation. So I was able to watch it there. And otherwise, it's not streaming anywhere. I am really unsure as to why it's not streaming. You can't rent it. It never has been released on Blu-ray. I think when I went to Amazon to find it, you could buy it on DVD or Laserdisc, Pete. I think those are the options right now.
Flip it every 15. Am I right? Flip it every 15.
Oh my gosh. Good times. Yeah, difficult to watch, which is weird because it seems like with the way things have been going in our country in the last 10-ish years, this would have been a film that's worth somebody picking back up and pushing out there, you know? And I'm not sure exactly what the status is with its distribution rights through, I can't remember who did it. Working Title is the company that funded it. So I'm not sure exactly, I don't know what they're doing with it.
Do you think it has, this is all armchairing, I haven't found anything. I know he has some strong words about why the soundtrack wasn't released, but do you think any of it has to do with Tim Robbins and his political leanings and feelings about this movie being taken not as it was intended?
You mean like Fight Club?
Nobody talks about Fight
Not
Club.
The movie, but like the club.
Like, the club, the actual Fight Club.
Is that something that would happen? I don't know, because I don't know. It's a very pointed film, and I guess the question is the satire now so accurate that people aren't watching it for the same reasons, or they're not getting any of that out of it anymore? I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
Well,
I don't know why, because it's not like his film Cradle Will Rock is easy to track down either.
No, that's true. All right, well, set this up first. For people who haven't seen it, knowing how hard it is to see, and I'll just say out loud, Tim Robbins has said on the record, if you want to watch this film, pirate it. And
that's funny that he's actually said that.
Yeah. So go ahead and set it up. Why are we doing this film? And this is a new series, and it's yours, so you should have the stage. The punk is yours.
That's right. Wow, where is this conversation going to end? Are you going to be tossing a boulder onto my head after you've stolen my glasses? Holy
You know
cow.
what? Both of it, that we are both riffing on that gag in particular, is a sign that we're real readers.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Wow. This is our Smoke and Mirrors series. This is a series where the target is really kind of like how politicians manipulate the system and the media covering them, and how the media also is complicit. There's a one public face, and sometimes there's something worse just out of frame. We're covering this, Barry Levinson's 1997 Wag the Dog, and Warren Beatty's 1998 film Bulworth. It's interesting that they all ended up being films from the 90s when I built this series, but
yeah,
I don't know. As I was looking at film options, they just seemed like really sharp and pointed films to discuss as it related to politics at the time, and all still feel relevant today. And I think that's the interesting element as we explore this series and these films, is to really look at, you know, what still stands out as something that is telling, it fits in today's eyes. So anyway, that's the series. And I think this film is a strong one to kick it off because of the way that we're painting kind of a Republican Senate candidate running for office, and the manipulations that are going on behind the curtains that we're not seeing, because again, this is a mockumentary or a pseudo-documentary, however you want to define it. We have a documentarian who's following Bob Roberts, the Senate candidate, played by Tim Robbins. And we are seeing him over the course of the story. We're seeing things that happen to be likely manipulations done by Bob Roberts and or his campaign staff. Of course, they're saying, "Oh, well, how dare you accuse us of doing these sorts of things?" But that's exactly the play. And I think the interesting thing that we're understanding as we watch this is just how these people do these things. What do we buy into as real in a world right now of constant barrage of things being called fake news, of a difficult time of trying to figure out what is actual truth? I think this is a great film to kind of start things off.
Did you know before yesterday that this film, this character was an SNL blow up?
No, I think that was so funny. So you sent me a video of this SNL sketch
from 1986. It was from season 12, episode 7. Steve Guttenberg and the Pretenders were apparently the guests, and this was just a character of the right-wing folk singer at a book burning campfire, singing these songs that were horrible.
Yeah,
They're horrible. Many of them were worse than the songs we get in the movie. I think they toned some of the rhetoric down for the movie, but it was Tim Robbins. It was his character, and I had no idea. This is one of the biggest surprise SNL spin-off characters to film that I can think of.
Well, and this is a character he had been wanting to make this film for 6 full years. And it took him all that time to get the funding to get everything put together so that he could actually do it. And it's just, as a side note, interesting that it was finally a British company that funded him to make a story about American politics. He couldn't get any money.
And not
here in the
Lorne
States.
Michaels.
Yeah, and not Lorne Michaels, right.
Yeah.
But I don't know if... See, I guess I don't know enough about the sketch. Like, had he already come up with this character on his own, and this was his kind of thing, and he just brought it to SNL as like, I want to do this. Yeah. So it's not like this is an SNL character like
MacGruber.
Like Gruber. Yeah, there you go. There's a pull for you.
I think that is the important part. I think this was a character he came up with and brought to the show, and just gave it to the staff writers to beef it up and the cast to beef it up. And it's very funny. I mean, it is very, and that is one thing you can stream.
Darkly funny. Yeah.
Darkly
we'll
funny.
put a link to it in the show notes. So definitely check it out.
I think my issue with the satire in this movie is, and the reason, and I love this movie. I think I liked it when I saw it originally. I think I liked it and laughed at it because there are things that are absurdly funny that you don't have to understand to enjoy. And I don't think I understood a lot of it. And now it plays just as a documentary. Like, the satire is really neutered because of the absurdity of our own political environment today. And that makes the movie, it lives in a very strange sort of liminal space where its intention when it was made was maybe more powerful, more incisive, more absurd. And it was lampooning the people that were doing things that were ridiculous in real life. And now those people are not doing things that are ridiculous. They're just doing life. And that makes it a little bit harder to watch. And the humor is much more sort of painful.
It's interesting how, it's interesting, and I suppose it makes sense how much Tim Robbins got right in putting this together, because this was kind of what was going on at the time, right? Like he was seeing what was going on in with the Reagan era conservatism that was happening at the time, and then at the time the film was made and released. Obviously, George Bush Sr. was in office. You had the Iran-Contra that kind of spread across both of those, which is part of this film. We have that in here. There's the culture war that actually just was getting ignited at the Republican National Convention, like months before all of this. And so Tim Robbins taps into a lot of stuff that was very, very current at the time. And so he threads it really smartly through everything going on. And I have to just shout out how brilliant I think it is to take this character, this Senate candidate, and turn him into a folk singer, because he's subverting all expectations of what folk singers were back in the 60s. And because definitely more of an aesthetic of the left at the time in the 60s, right, with the hippies and all of that sort of stuff. And this became very much kind of something that Republicans would weaponize, kind of that nostalgia, right? And here we have this character in the 90s who, because this takes place in what, 1990, 1991, like right across that, right at that election line.
Right.
And he is using nostalgia of this type of music, this folk music, to actually sell his messages in the present day. And so he's weaponizing nostalgia for a return to normal, and then the way that he sings his songs and everything, and weaponizing all that for kind of fear and grievance and greed and all of those sorts of things. You know, I mean, he's got his own greed is good message in here, right? I mean,
yeah,
the whole thing plays. And I think it's incredibly smart to tell the story the way that he does in this pseudo-documentary approach, where it just makes it feel real. Like we're watching real news stories. We're watching, this candidate as he's talking to fans. He's talking to other political opponents or reporters or his staff or whatever. We're getting a sense of this world, and it just feels real because of that documentary approach that he does. And I think it's incredibly smart. And to your point, I think all of that is what makes it that much harder to watch today, because the start of what Reagan and Bush and everyone was doing at the time, how all of that has kind of grown and changed and morphed into kind of where we've landed now. And seeing this film now through today's eyes feels kind of frightening as to how it's like, how have we known that this is how things are going, yet we've not been able to figure out how to actually change it or get out of it. And I think that's the frightening part of the fact that this film is, 34 years old now.
It's interestingly, I mean, it is one of the best cases of history repeating itself in Hollywood that we have, right? Or art imitates life kind of a thing. But it also gives me hope a little bit that we've had big feelings about the state of our economy or the state of our body politic for generations, since the founding of the country and before. And you know what? Like somehow humanity kind of wallows and trips their way through it. And some people are going to make out it really, really well by doing bad things. And some people are going to lose out by trying to do good things. And it causes a lot of pain and strife. And at the other end of it, we're going to have new things to feel strongly about in 34 years. And the only promise that we have right now is that there's going to probably be 34 years from now. And we're going to look back on this era and say, oh my God, can you believe how wrong/right we got it? Can you believe that we're living through that, right? I guess that is a weird, dark silver lining to watching this movie. The movie is and funny that just how much it plays on music, because one of the things I read from Tim Robbins is that the reason he became political was 1984 when Reagan played "Born in the USA" across his rallies. That was such a misuse of the tone and tenor of spirit of that song that music tied to political events became something that he really connected to, and that becomes the heart of this character for sure in this movie.
Interesting. That's an interesting point, because that hasn't changed. You still have artists complaining all the time that, I do not want that person using my music. I want to ban them from using my music. And then these people still use these artists' music as much as they want. And it's become a real sticking point.
Yeah. Yeah. The cast. What?
Oh my goodness.
A murderer's row of a cast.
This, it's funny because you always hear about these movies that just have everybody in them, like JFK and those sorts of movies. And then this is a movie that you never think about, but I'm like, wow, okay, so Tim Robbins, Giancarlo Esposito, you've got Ray Wise, who, I most know him as Laura Palmer's dad in the Twin Peaks series, but he's been in plenty of other films too. Gore Vidal pops up in here. John Cusack, Peter Gallagher, Alan Rickman, Susan Sarandon, James Spader, Fred Ward. You've got
Jack Black, first film.
Jack Black's his first film. Tom Atkins, David Strathairn, Helen Hunt is in here. Lynn Thigpen. It's just Fisher Stevens, Bob Balaban, Jeremy Piven shows up. I mean, it's crazy.
So here's my question for you. 2 weeks before cameras roll, one of the major financiers for the film pulls out, and or they threaten to pull out. They call and say, we're not going to actually release any of the funds to pay the people that you're using to make this movie until you get another star. And the cameos that you've booked don't count. Do you know which name on this list was that star that he got to come in?
I know where he got some additional funding from a star, and I don't know if it's the same person. Is it?
It's the same person, Andy.
That's fantastic.
It's Alan Rickman.
That's amazing.
It's amazing that of all these people that are already signed on for this movie, Alan Rickman saves the day.
Yeah. Comes in not just to be the star that he gets to get the financing, but also contributes additional financing to help make it happen.
Yeah, he came in on scale and paid. He practically paid to do the movie. Not practically, he paid to do the movie.
Right. Yeah.
He literally functionally paid to be in this movie.
That's amazing. And, and I love it because this is a fun role for him as kind of this behind the scenes man working in Bob's camp who we see has been involved in the Iran-Contra story, in the Phoenix program. We see him in a congressional hearing, and we see how these sorts of things play, and it just works so well. And Alan Rickman just nails it. Like, he is so great as kind of this slimy politician who's working behind the scenes. I love what he's doing as the campaign chairman in the film.
Me too. Now that leads us to the final. I just want to unpack why the final act works, and I would like you to dissect it with me a little bit from the screenplay perspective, because I couldn't help but think about where sometimes these movies go wrong. Satirical films go wrong because they generally get too broad in the third act. Sure. Right? They get too big. What we have in the setup to the big finale is Giancarlo Esposito's character, Bugs Raplin, who is presented as a muckraking journalist. Like, he's not somebody that we're set up to love, right? He's trouble. He's a fly in the ointment. He's not somebody we're supposed to either take seriously or find congenial. Like, I don't think we're supposed to find affinity to him. Yeah,
he's like Jude Law in Contagion. He's like the worst sort of media guy who has the. I mean, what is the name? I can't even remember the name of his periodical that he works behind, but it just sounds just total like conspiracy theorist muckraking sort of nonsense, right? And he's painted that way. But what's fascinating is when you listen to what he's saying, you're like, okay, he seems like a conspiracy theorist, but he might actually be right. This isn't like chemtrails sort of conspiracy theories. This is actual things that relate to these political figures, sorts of things that you're like, you know what, I think he's right. But unfortunately, he doesn't paint himself well.
Now, Robbins on Raplin says, I didn't want him to be a knight in shining armor. When you're screaming the truth and everybody's saying you're making a big deal out of nothing, or you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're crazy, you're a lunatic, that's a difficult road. And that's the character that we have in Bugs Raplin. Like we're supposed to not like him and carry the contrasting perspective. Oh my God, what if he's right?
Yeah.
There is a setup at the end wherein Bugs Raplin apparently shoots Bob Roberts.
Yeah.
And there is early evidence. Raplin is arrested. There is early evidence that he did, which is then rolled back, and Raplin is released. Meanwhile, Tim Robbins becomes a survivor martyr.
Yeah.
So without revealing the sort of final punchline, how is it that this movie is able to, or how did this final, the structure of these final beats from Bugs Raplin's increased fervor to Tim Robbins as a survivor not become something that we're sitting here saying that was ridiculous? Structurally, what do you see in how this thing was unraveled in the third act that keeps us hooked?
Well, I think that it's just smart in the build-up, right? Like we meet and talk with, like Terry has conversations with Bugs over the course of the story. We see him approaching, trying to get interviews, trying to like push to get information out of Bob time and time again. Like he's always there at every little press event, every little potential performance and meetup and everything. And so he is a consistent character. And in that scene where the assassination attempt happens, like everything is just kind of going a little crazy at that particular moment. The camera work has gone a little rough because the crowds are so intense right there.
Oh, it's suddenly just Brady Reagan. Like it is.
Yeah,
that's
right.
The attempt.
Yeah, it's everything has just gone into chaos mode. And I think because everything has been built up in a way where we can buy into all of this. Like we've already also had setups where you see other attempts with politicians as far as like trying to sell them as certain things. So, and this is without the reveal and everything, but we're already getting setups about how Bob's competition, right? Gore Vidal's character, Senator Paste, the incumbent. We have a whole thing where the media picks up a story of him out with this young girl, right? And they're running with it and everything. And he's just like, this is just a bunch of crap. It's my granddaughter's friend. They cropped the photo. If you just look at the actual photo, you'll see my granddaughter's also sitting in the car with us. Yet, it still is something that affects his points, right? And viewers of the film get a sense that, okay, this is probably something that the Roberts camp has done specifically to try to taint the way that people view him, because at this particular point in the film, he's the one who is leading, right? And so the Roberts camp is like, we got to figure out, this is our assumption, but the way the film paints it, the Roberts camp is trying to do things to get ahead. Paste even says, as much in one of their debates, and Roberts is like, how dare you come back me and say that we did this intentionally, all of those sorts of things. So we're already getting all of the different things that camps potentially do to try getting ahead. We're seeing a lot of that stuff build. So by the time we get to that point where we have this assassination attempt, nothing about it comes across as going too far or pushing across a line where, this just went too big and now the satire isn't working anymore. It all feels very much of the world and everything that has been set up before up to this point.
I think that mirrors the setup of Bob in the beginning. I think you could ably make the case that in the first 15 minutes, ideological issues notwithstanding, like Bob is a likable guy. It is not until one of his first songs that you realize, this guy's got some interestingly conservative views that maybe don't align with reality at that point in the world, and or only a very small fraction of our people's reality. And that pace of establishing Bob as this increasingly kind of controversial candidate up until the point where he actually engages in a debate on the air with a black reporter, you would not be mistaken to think, oh, I think I'm supposed to like this guy. Right? Like that's insidious. By the time we get to the end of the movie and he is shot, I think one of the grand narrative conflicts that we as the audience are meant to hold is, oh God, how do I feel about this guy that has grown unlikable to me over the course of how he handles himself in public, has now been shot for his views? Yeah. Do I need to feel bad about how I feel about this guy? That is a really neat tip of, or like sleight of hand, right? That I'm supposed to feel structurally in this screenplay. So when we get to the final, the end, which is, depending on your view, hyper manipulative or just perfect icing on the cake, when he's in a wheelchair performing. And so we have been told time and again that he's a great victim because he's now paralyzed from the waist down, and he's tapping his foot to his own song.
Right.
That's the end. And so does that give you a sense of resolution, of vindication, of I've just been manipulated and now I don't know what to feel? How does the foot tap your foot?
I mean, I remember when I first saw this film, it was like a jaw-dropping moment. It's just like, holy crap. Because I don't know if up to that point, I guess I hadn't been thinking that this had been something that him and his team had set up. Like it hadn't crossed my mind. And so when I saw that, it was just kind of like that whoa sort of moment. And I think it still hits and plays that way, where it's like, wow, okay. I think, I don't know, maybe through today's eyes, we're a little more skeptical, and it's more like, well, that's no surprise. Like, I feel like that's probably how we're looking at it now, which is, it's interesting and it's telling, especially, this is coming after there have been several, we'll just say, assassination attempts on President Trump. And people called this film out as examples and proof that, he's just faked all of it. I'm not here to say whether he did or not. Like there's, and even Tim Robbins, I think, was just like, we can't just be making these assumptions.
Yeah. Butler was real. Tim Robbins comes out and says, Butler was real. Stop doing this to my movie. Right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
We have to be able to separate reality.
Yeah. And I think people want it to be, faked.
Yeah.
But what I also think is fascinating about the attempts, and that we don't see in this film, but the fact that, this is something else that he certainly taps into here, the cultish followings that some of these politicians end up getting, because after Trump's assassination attempt, people would go around wearing bandages on their ear, right?
Yeah.
Like that was a mark of pride that they would do. We have that same sort of mentality with many of these people who are following Bob Roberts in the film, and they're standing outside his hotel rooms, the hospital rooms, and everything. They're like, oh, seven floors up, 3 rooms over, like they know exactly where he is. They're talking about him, and I think over the course of the film, we're following a few of these, particularly Jack Black's character and his brothers, Roger and his siblings, and we're getting a sense as to kind of like the fervor that these people have in following these people. And the fact that, I mean, as we find out in the film, Giancarlo Esposito's character is let go. He's released because they don't have any evidence. There's the wrong fingerprint on the gun, and it doesn't make any sense for him to have been the assassin. He is released, yet he gets killed, presumably, we don't know why or who, but presumably by some of these fervent followers of Bob Roberts. Because like as they find out this news in the very last scene of the film, these people all cheer. They are thrilled with this news. And so I think, I don't know, there's a lot of interesting elements that are going into all of that as we kind of get to that just, it makes it play really, really well.
Yeah, I think so too. Should we take a break?
Yes, let's take a break. First, you can find the show on YouTube, and you can join us live when we record. We will even take your questions in the post-show chit-chat, and members get the full post-show conversation and always know what to listen to next. Subscribe to The Next Reel on YouTube. The link to this episode is in the show notes. We'll be right back.
I wanted to talk about the mayor's wife and her 3 sons, and you wrote that this is the Don't Look Back pattern, and you went and watched Don't Look Back, and I feel like I need to be educated a little bit about Don't Look Back.
I was very curious because it's just a very famous Bob Dylan documentary directed by D.A. Pennebaker, who's also would go on with his partner Chris Hedges to make a brilliant political documentary, The War Room, following Bill Clinton's campaign staff as he was running for election. That's a fantastic documentary, well worth checking out.
They both came to see you and talked to our class at the journalism school.
And our class in the film school.
No, Andy, they talked twice.
They talked 2 times.
They have the stamina.
They're
I wonder
very
who
skilled.
went seconds. Who got
skilled.
like the like really sloppy, exhausted talk.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So Don't Look Back. Obviously, we have early on in this film, we have Bob Roberts doing one of his folk songs. We have the kind of the full music video play, and it's very much straight out of Don't Look Back. It's in this film. It's called Wall Street Rap. It's a parody of Dylan where he's got the cards and he's just doing all the cards and dropping the cards as he kind of goes through all of that. We have that straight out of Don't Look Back. Great parody. But there's also this moment in Don't Look Back that, it's essentially following Bob Dylan and his team in London as he's going on doing some performances and stuff. Joan Baez is in it. Donovan's in it. It's less I was actually expecting more music. I think I'm just so used to now like music docs where you just have all the music and then some conversations. This is really just following them as people, and you get a sense of what Dylan is like when he's talking to the press, how his manager manages negotiations with getting payments. Like, it's actually a really interesting insight in these people at the time. But there is a scene in here where Bob is he finds out that the I think it's the high sheriff's wife is here to meet him, and they're like, the high sheriff, and so they go to meet her, and she brings her 3 sons, and there's a scene that's like that Tim Robbins pulls straight out of it, where she's very excited that he's here in her town and making sure that he's getting taken care of. She introduces him to her 3 sons. We have this scene play out, and it really feels beat by beat, where the mayor's wife introduces Bob to her 3 sons, the oldest of which is Jack Black. And then, of course, we see them continue across the film. So it's fascinating to see how much he tapped into what D.A. Pennebaker was doing in Don't Look Back. And also, I think it's just fair to say, Tim Robbins has called out how much a fan he is of This Is Spinal Tap, and the whole. That's, I think, part of the reason why he went with the pseudo-documentary approach for this.
I really love seeing Jack Black in this as his first film, and I think in the credits, do you remember their names? I think it was Calvin and Bert.
Roger. He's Roger.
He's Roger, but the brothers were Calvin and Bert. They're not credited as Calvin Davis or Bert Davis, so I'm kind of guessing. But Matthew Faber and Matt McGrath played the brothers, and they, went on to do things. Good things. I don't mean to diminish them, but Jack Black was the face. That's the iconic one I remembered. I watched a conversation between Sam Harris on his podcast. Sam Harris, what is it called? His podcast. I don't remember what it's called. Anyway, there's an interview on his show that he said he actually got his start on this movie too. He and Jack Black, this was both their first movie. I don't know what Harris was doing on this movie.
Interesting.
But they were talking about what their experience was, and Jack Black talking about it was like, this movie went to Cannes. I was not invited to go to Cannes, but my dad was living in Cannes, so I went to Cannes and stayed with my dad, and I went out and I hung out with Tim Robbins and the crew and did all the Cannes stuff, and then I went on for 10 years in just a drought. He said, I thought my life was set, and there was just nothing off of this movie. Like, there was nothing. And it gets me wondering about the role of some of these movies. I mean, this movie has an ideology, right? This was a movie that has a real perspective, and I wonder just how it'd be interesting to look at who else maybe was tainted by the Bob Roberts effect.
I mean, I don't know if it's tainted so much as, I mean, it's interesting because I do think that these types of films aren't necessarily where you're going to be getting like breakout stars, you know. It's because it feels like a documentary, and so I think it's tricky. So when somebody sees Susan Sarandon as a newscaster, they go, "Oh, that's great," you know, getting Susan Sarandon to be a newscaster. But when somebody sees Jack, that's a cameo. Right. But when someone sees Jack Black, they're like, "Oh, he's just grabbing real people off the street to do these things." And you don't think that this is an actor who's cast to play the part. And I think that it's a really tricky line with the kind of that pseudo documentary type of thing. But I mean, Jack Black is great in the part, and he comes across as somebody who is a little bit psycho and a little too in love with his candidate. And it's frightening. By the time we see him at the end, he's got the little, you know, the little target on his head, and it says Bob on there. Like, he's like, oh, okay, he's going down a dark road, this guy. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. He does. I think the best thing to say about Jack Black's performance in this is that I believed him.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. He plays it really well. But it's interesting because we do see alternate points of view over the course of the story, right? Yeah. Like, I think the first time is the news reporter who interviews him on Good Morning Philadelphia, and she's pretty adamantly opposed to him. She says, so before their conversation goes in a way where it comes across that they don't agree at all, and afterwards she's pretty angry. So we're seeing it there. I think the one that plays most interestingly is it's Philadelphia. The whole thing is taking place in Pennsylvania, but it really comes across like an SNL sort of that type of show. It's called Cutting Edge Live.
Cutting Edge Live, right. Yeah. CEL, SNL.
Yeah, please. And I'm assuming that they're parodying SNL here. But it was interesting because we definitely see how things are changing in the context of a story like this, where the corporate interests that run the network are fans of Bob Roberts. They want him to be on the show. They want him to perform on the show. But some of the performers, John Cusack playing one of them, hates the fact that he has to work with Bob Roberts. He's completely in disagreement with him. He refuses to do the ads with him. And then the floor director of the show, like, sabotages it because they're letting Bob sing, and he's making up a new song and they're not supposed to, and very pissed off. And I think it's Bob Balaban, who's the producer, who's just like, no, this is great. This is what we want. And so she goes and pulls all the electricity, all the cables out, and to sabotage the show. I think it's fascinating how we're also seeing, like, I like that we get to see some of the other side and how people are getting frustrated with the popularity of this guy.
Yeah, the way it's planted, and knowing how Robbins feels about these things, because he's an outspoken sort of advocate himself, it does feel like all of these events are us as the audience getting to check in with reality, right? Like, whenever this happens, whenever we see the characters on Cutting Edge Live, you know, get to speak back and have their own bit of advocacy, right? It does feel like, oh, this is Robert saying, don't worry, because there is a force that exists to contravene, right? There's a force that exists to stand up to what this character Bob Roberts is. And I think that works for the movie, because if you are politically one way, you feel like, oh, that's me. I'm seeing me. I'd like to be the one to pull the electricity. And if you're ideologically leaning the other way, you look at that and say, God, those lunatics are throwing their shoes into the machinery, right? They're the problem. And the movie really works either way, which is, to its credit. I mean, structurally, it's very smart.
Well, okay, so to that end, who is this for? Is this for a broad audience? Is the satire sharp specifically for left-leaning audiences? Can right-wing audiences watch this and appreciate it? Or are they seeing like a guy who like they can look up to? Like how does the satire play for a broad audience?
Well, I think, sort of pulling myself out of my own belief system, I think Bob Roberts represents somebody who is firmly able to speak truth to power, right? Bob Roberts is a character, and power in this case is the woke establishment that is taking over our country, our schools, our churches, our lives, and our banks and our financial institutions, right? And so in that regard, I think I have to imagine a right-leaning audience could laugh at this and say, yeah, aspirationally, those are the kinds of people we want. We want people who are going to sing about, privilege, because it's earned. It is earned privilege. And on the other side, I think, Robbins is making a case. The satire exists for the other side that says, hey, this is lunacy. We have forgotten so much about who we exist to serve, and that is each other. And this movie lampoons the sort of selfishness that has crept into our politics and our finance and our church and all of this in the guise of, purity. And so I think, again, from my Doyleist perspective, I think Tim Robbins, as a filmmaker, wants this to work for everybody. And I think I think the satire exists maybe more for one audience than the other. How does that sound? Does that sound like a fair defense of Robbins's intentions?
I think it sounds like a fair defense. It is always a trick in satire like this of figuring out how it can be balanced, but I think you make a fair case for it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I can't remember at what point we all as audience members started recognizing just how strongly left-leaning Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon as a couple were. Like, I feel like it was probably in his next film that he did with his wife, Dead Man Walking, because I think it was when she won an Oscar that my memory might be a little fuzzy, but I think that might have been like the Oscar speech that she gave that kind of stepped into, people always get pissed. We're like, well, why are they talking about politics in their Oscar
stay in your lane. You're an actor.
And that might have been one of those cases. I'm not 100% sure, and that's 95, a few years after this. So at this point, we might not have recognized that Tim Robbins was so left-leaning. And so to your point, this could have come across as something that audiences from either side could potentially still be getting something out of, even if one side is getting more of the satire than the other.
Yeah. I think you just like, as you're talking, I'm remembering, oh, right. I think that I didn't even know that the two of them as a couple were interested in social justice until the next movie. And that's how their ideology sort of crept into my awareness. It was not this movie. Yeah,
I think that may be it. But it is interesting. Like, where do you stand on Tim Robbins as a director? This is only one of 3 feature films that he made. He did this, that he did Dead Man Walking, which we just said, and then Cradle Will Rock a few years later, which also is a political film. That one takes place it's like Orson Welles and his team putting on a play, as I recall, and it's it's a very pointed glimpse into it. I'm trying to look it up real quick. Cradle Will Rock, historical drama fictionalizing the true events that surround the development of the 1937 musical The Cradle Will Rock by Mark Blitzen. It adapts history to create an account of the original production, bringing in other stories of the time to produce a social commentary on the role of art and power in the 1930s, particularly amidst the struggles of the labor movement at the time and the corresponding appeal of socialism and communism among many intellectuals, artists, and working class people in the same period.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
if you want to watch another film with a gigantic cast,
yeah,
check it out.
Well, all that being said, I can't actually comment on. I don't feel like I can comment on Tim Robbins as a director because I don't know that I have a scope. I can tell you this is a competent film. This is a film that surprises me. It is, and hearing him talk about how, even though it's in this sort of documentary style, it is meticulously planned. Yeah. And there were some things that are notoriously, vamped and improvised. Most of the movie is well planned, well scripted, well documented, and he apparently leads a very efficient set. So all that is to say, Bully for Tim Robbins, I wish I had seen the other two films. I seen, obviously I've seen Dead Man Walking.
I don't know, but it's a fantastic film. It's absolutely one worth checking out if you haven't.
Oh, for sure.
Very powerful film.
And he's done a bunch of, he's done episodes in series. He's done some TV movies. I just haven't seen enough of them. What I can tell you is, as an actor, he's one of the most interesting guys to watch perform on screen. I am a huge fan of his work on the big and small screen, and I think I sort of fell in love with him as a performer in The Player, because of course The Player is a movie about movies, and my God, like that's catnip. Right. Yeah. And I think it was just really, really well done. But then obviously Shawshank and
Mystic and we've talked about him. We've talked about both of those movies. We talked about Hudsucker Proxy, Bull Durham.
Yep.
He's been in a lot of things that we've discussed on the show. And I think especially in this window of time, right? Like definitely a lot of things here.
He's in, I know people are talking about the show because of, for lots of reasons, but the Silo or just Silo, his performance in Silo is outstanding. Like he is a really compelling character on that show. So big fan.
Nice. Well, I really enjoy him directing. I think he tells really interesting and chooses to focus on unique stories. And I like what he's doing. Even if it's only been 3 times, I fit into his vibe as far as kind of what he's wanting to achieve with them. So definitely enjoy his work. Let's see what else. Did we talk about the soundtrack? I think it's important to note the songs that he wrote or his brother wrote. And I think they co-wrote the songs, and then his brother wrote the rest of the music for the film. Yeah.
And then he killed it.
Well, he very specifically did not want a soundtrack to get released. Or are you saying he killed it as a performer in the film?
No, both of those things.
He did.
He killed it as a performer in the film. Absolutely, he did. He killed it. And then I'm agreeing with what you're saying. He said, I don't want a soundtrack release because I don't want people to be able to separate these songs from the context.
Yeah.
And that matters.
The Fight Club mentality all over again.
Yeah, he Fight Clubbed it.
Yeah. He was concerned that people would listen to the songs without hearing them, and wanted to make sure that like there's a message in these songs. They need to be just part of the movie. I think that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yep, me too.
But he kills it, man. There are some songs. It's the one where he's singing the duet with, I can't remember her name, Miss what was the thing? Miss Broken Dove. From
Miss Broken Dove.
Yeah, that song. I'm just like, man, this feels so authentic. It's crazy how much it works.
Who was Miss Broken Dove? She was. I need my
Kelly
page to
Willis.
refresh. Kelly Willis.
Yeah.
A specific shout out to Kelly Willis, because Kelly Willis in this movie, I think it's their second song that they do together, where we get cutaways to her singing, and you can almost tell she's singing these words for the first time. And she is giving the most nuanced performance of, I'm uncomfortable doing this in real time that I've seen. She is absolutely amazing in this movie.
Yeah, she does a great job. It really
On
plays.
rewatch, definitely watch Kelly Willis as Miss Broken Dove. She's a standout, iconic performer who doesn't want to perform what she's performing.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, the songs I think are just really pointed. Did you have any favorite songs, favorite moments from songs?
I like the Wall Street rap because I like the Bob Dylan of it all. And it's also, of course, not just Bob Dylan. What was the other one? The Australian group.
In Excess. They also did their own riff on it.
They did their riff on it. That's the one that, everything starts with an excess with me as a teenager. So that's for sure. I think in terms of favorite songs, I don't know, man. Here's the problem. The only song I can think about right now is the Monkey Song, which is actually from the SNL sketch, which people should watch.
Oh God, that song. My jaw hit the floor.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, why does it still feel relevant that this song is something like it was shocking.
Shocking. So that right now, I would say that's my favorite song because that's the most recent song I've listened to.
It's weird hearing an SNL sketch like that where the audience doesn't even laugh. They're just the audience. You can hear the audience's shock.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Palpable. Thick.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I really enjoy the first song, and which kicks off with the what were the lyrics I wrote down? Some people will work, some simply will not, but they'll complain and complain and complain and complain and complain.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also the song about how his grandma, she just never wanted to invest in her money.
Grandma felt guilty
Grandma
about
felt
being
guilty.
so rich.
Yeah,
and it
but not
bothered her
me.
till the day she died. But I will take my inheritance and invest it with pride. Yes, invest it with pride.
Yeah. Which I thought that was genius because we see Bob Roberts' audience and they're all holding up pride signs. And I'm like, man, that plays so different today because pride signs today, it's a totally different thing. And here they are, they're celebrating pride in their greed, right? As opposed to like gay pride. And so I was like, wow, this is an interesting shift in the way that pride is used in audiences.
It is a really interesting sort of testimony to the power of language and the flexibility of language to adapt to the cultural reality of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
This movie is a bit of a time capsule in that regard.
Is. Yeah, it's interesting how this is a story where we keep noticing what's going on and keep making movies about it, and yet we are doomed to repeat it because what this film also captures, and hopefully we'll see across the course of this series, is because of how good they are at stealing our attention, and which is interesting coming right off of the Platformed Lives series, things that steal our attention. Oh, hey, I want to watch this 24-hour broadcast about Truman. These things that are designed to pull us away. I mean, I worked on a documentary, The Joe Show, about Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who did exactly this. He would do these awful, terrible things that would get some news, but then he would do something that was just so over the top and ridiculous, like, oh, I'm going to make all my inmates wear pink outfits now. And the media would just run with that and drop the other story. And now we're seeing like this is the pattern that these politicians have now. It's very easy for them to manipulate the media to get them to change their stories. So crazy.
Things are going fine. They have been going fine. They were going fine 34 years ago. We'll figure it out. That is a message of hope.
I love it. I love that you're bringing that. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, let's move into the back half. But first, let's take a quick break.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Membership Ad Track.
Oh, sorry.
Should that just not be there, or is it replaced?
There, I just replaced it.
Oh, good. Music by Zabuton, Venz Adams, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show and the full archive at truestory.fm. You can follow us from there too. Plus, you can find out how to become a member and go further with every episode. Check out our merch store at thenextreel.com/merch. And if your app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Okay. Is there a Bob Roberts 2?
There really should be. I'd be really curious what Tim Robbins would do with Bob Roberts 2 in today's world. That'd be crazy. No, there's not. But it's interesting. The character, I mean, you already brought up the SNL sketch, and it's just interesting. This character obviously did hit a little bit at the time because The Simpsons had an episode called Sideshow Bob Roberts that was a partial parody of this movie. So,
well, did that lead to any award nods?
You know, it did okay for itself. 4 wins with 4 other nominations at Cannes, where it premiered at the Director's Fortnight. Tim Robbins was nominated for the SACD Prize, which is the, I don't know how you say this in French, Coup de Coeur d'Auteur, but lost to Xiao Ming Su for Dust of Angels. That is an award awarded by the Society of Dramatic Authors and Composers to highlight a standout film, language, or author-driven feature in the independent sidebar. At the Golden Globes, Tim Robbins was nominated for Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical, but lost to himself in The Player. That's right. That's right. I love that.
Awesome.
The National Board of Review, it landed in the top 10 films. The New York Film Critics Circle Awards nominated Robbins for Best New Director, but lost to Allison Anders for Gas Food Lodging. And the Political Film Society gave the film the PFS Award for Democracy. So, yeah.
The award for democracy.
Right?
I wonder if they don't give that award anymore.
Right.
How to do at the box office?
Well, once he finally got his funding, Robbins got $3.9 million to make his pseudo-doc, which is about $8.8 million in today's dollars. The movie opened on 8 screens September 4th, 1992, on a very slow weekend where it opened against the Matthew Broderick comedy Out on a Limb. Do you remember that one? I sure didn't.
Viscerally.
And the single screen release of the great documentary Brothers Keeper. None of the films made it into the top 10, surprisingly. The film eventually expanded to just over 300 screens, and, it did okay for what it was. The movie went on to earn $4.5 million domestically and $3.5 million internationally for a total gross of $18 million in today's dollars. All told, the film landed with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $89,000, enough to end up in the green and make its mark, which is, again, why it's strange that it is just so hard to find these days.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It is just crazy that this is so hard to find. Why are people scared of this movie, Andy?
I don't know, but it's definitely a film. I'm glad I revisited it. It was just, I remember watching it at the time and going, wow, that's really interesting. Like that final moment of the foot tapping, I've never forgotten. And but revisiting it, I'm like, man, he just got so much of it right. But again, it probably speaks to how things just haven't changed in 40 plus years. It's just ratcheting down all of the same patterns over and over again. So
I just feel like I end how I began. Like I found it funny, and now it's so right, and it just bought us nothing. Yeah, I really would like it to be funny again, and right now it's. It's
maybe 40 more years, yeah.
Less funny to watch, yeah. I'd like this one to cycle back around when we figured some more stuff out.
I hear you there. All right, well, that is it for our conversation about Bob Roberts. Next week, we are looking at Barry Levinson's Wag the Dog. If Bob Roberts is about faking an assassination attempt, Wag the Dog is about faking a war. Same media machine, same appetite for a good story over a true one, just with higher stakes. And now, let's do our ratings.
Letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ page over on the Letterboxd platform, where we rate and review all the movies we've talked about on the Next Reel family of film shows. What are you going to do?
I'm torn. I've been dancing in my head since I watched this. 4 stars, 5 stars, 4.5 stars. Where am I sitting with this? It's way up there. I feel like our conversation improved my opinion of it even just a little bit more. So I'm going to say 4.5. I was sitting at 4 coming in. I don't think it's going to be quite 5, but 4.5 I think is a great place for this one to land.
Yeah, I'm at 4 stars and a heart. Same reason, and it just feels like a great. Maybe the star fell because of how I feel about the world right now. I feel like maybe I'm punishing the movie for being too accurate.
Yeah,
we'll never know.
We'll never know. Well, that averages out to 4.25, which rounds up to 4.5 stars and a heart over on our account on Letterboxd, which you can find at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film and Pete at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Bob Roberts, if you were able to find it? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.